Hello, hello, hello. It's 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, February 22nd. Um, I am going to take just a couple of minutes here to make sure that we are uh, live on the one or two channels that we have left. So, as you know, if you're just joining, uh, we have abandoned Facebook altogether. This is because we didn't agree with the policy that came out in November of 2024, where basically it said that all of Facebook users would be automatically scraped into AI learning models. And we just didn't feel comfortable with that. So we took our entire presence down off of Facebook. Hopefully you guys can hear me. I have no way of knowing if this live stream is actually uh broadcasting because we lost. Okay, so it looks like I'm good on Rumble. We lost our Rockfin channel. So I think it's because we never got paid. So basically we we chose not to take the RAE money and then translate it into some kind of currency, which then we could translate into US dollars. We never did that in the 4 or 5 years that we were on Rockfin. And I logged in this morning to find out that they had wiped out all the followers. Now, our content still lives on Rockfin, and we have like maybe $5 of 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 a payment from Rockfin waiting for us, which we're not going to access because the sorry about the coughing. I'm still dealing with this. Because the um it's so complicated to try to uh translate the money from RAE to Ethereum to yet another type of cryptocurrency or digital currency and then into dollars. We're not that savvy. We don't really, we use cash everywhere we go as much as we can. So Rockfin took us down. We decided to take ourselves off of one of our biggest channels, which was our Facebook channel. So if you are listening to this and you happen to be on Facebook, go ahead and share this because I think I actually got a letter in the mail from somebody, believe it or not, from a follower on Facebook who didn't understand that we had taken our Facebook page down altogether and all of our Facebook presence. This means we have no Instagram, we have no Messenger, we have no Facebook. I got a letter in the mail from somebody that said, I love listening to your Facebook live streams. And I just kind of get the feeling a lot of people think that uh, maybe we were erased by the system when actually no, we removed ourselves from the system by choice. So if you happen to be listening to this and you are on Facebook, please take this video if you're listening on YouTube or if you're listening on Rumble. Go ahead and take these videos and share them around on Twitter, also known as X, or Blue Sky, or your Facebook page, and share it with your buddies if you so choose. No pressure. I'm just saying that I think there are people that think that we have been erased, um, and that's not the case. We chose to leave the system. Um, so, just to give you guys a recap on what's going on, I'm actually going to take a couple of seconds and share this live stream on my Twitter page. So if you'll just bear with me. Um, the Just to give you a bit of a recap. Um, so Kev Truth, I'm assuming that you're listening on YouTube, correct? Um, Hopefully that's where you're listening because I can't seem to find. the feed on YouTube as well. So let me see. Um, on January 23rd, JP received a meeting request from his boss's boss. And basically, the meeting request said, hey, just want to take 5 minutes to check in. So he accepted the meeting request um, with the boss, and he knew what was coming because JP's coworker said, hey, I just had a meeting with the boss's boss, and I was fired. So JP knew what was coming. And so the entire department ultimately was uh, disappeared. It was eradicated. It was disintegrated. JP, a bunch of his colleagues, as well as JP's direct boss, were let go. So the department was downsized considerably. So that happened on January 23rd. So one of the things that I want to remind people is that JP was a contractor. So he accepted this contract position back in July of 2022 because he was told by his agency that within 6 months there would be a conversion and he would be a full time employee for this giant organization that he was contracting for. So he went ahead and took it. Um, 6 months went by and there was zero conversation about conversion. In fact, it was just the opposite. There would actually be a freeze on converting new contractors or any contractors that were currently working. No new individuals would be hired into the department, and there was a freeze. So that took place, towards the end of 2022. And then there was a buyout. The giant corporation that JP is contracting for bought a smaller organization, still very giant, still very, worth billions, but bought them. So those individuals were then incorporated into JP's department. And then, so that happened, not, soon after or around the time that he was brought in as a contractor. And these things take time. These sort of big company reorgs, they take a lot of time. When you swallow up another company, it takes, a couple of years for things to kind of settle into place. So this was all sort of happening while JP was contracting. And then a couple of other things took place, like all managers that had tenure were fired. So everybody that was getting ready to reach their 20-year anniversary with the company, boom, wiped out. So they lost their giant salaries, of course. They lost their retirement that they had with the company. And so all these people that were managers, department directors, higher ups, they were all fired. But JP was still contracting. He still had his job. Now, remember, as a contractor, you do not get any benefits. So he has to get benefits through the temporary agency that was contracting him out to the big company. And those benefits are typically really shitty. So he had shitty benefits. He's in the 3 years that he was contracting with the company, he never had a pay raise. He never had a formal review. He never, and yet he was asked to do all sorts of things that were way above his pay grade. But because he's a contractor, they can continue to pay him the low wage, not have to pay um, into a benefits package, never gave him a bonus, nothing. He never had a pay raise in about 3 years that he was there because he was a contractor. So this is the way of the world now in our assessment of what's going on um in the corporate world. This is the way of these sort of middle class earners. So people who have the potential to earn a middle class income, which would be anywhere between, say, low 90s to maybe 150, maybe $180,000 a year. they're all going to be shoved into these earners that never get bonuses, never get benefits, never get pay raises. It's literally just working paycheck to paycheck. Or you can take your career and you can throw it away and you can go work for McDonald's or you can go work for Lowe's, and make $16 an hour after having earned anywhere from 40 up to $70 an hour, or maybe even 90 or $100 an hour. So these are unsustainable options for people who have mortgages and have um, utilities that they have to pay, rising medical costs like we have in this household. And so just let me pause for a minute and tell you. So on January 23rd, he had the conversation with his direct manager at the corporation that said, we're going to have to dissolve the department. And you're part of that dissolvement or part of that dissolution. Now, there's a couple of things that were done wrong in this particular situation. As I've mentioned over and over again, JP is a contractor. When contractors lose their job and have gig employment, like Peep Peeping is saying over here, let me go ahead and put her on the screen. Exactly. So thank you for that. When you're a contractor and you lose your job, you never ever hear from the people that you're working with, like at the company. You only hear from the agency that gives you the paycheck, which in JP's case, it was the employment agency, the recruiter agency, or the temp agency, whatever you want to call it. So, first of all, he's hearing from his direct manager that he works with at the company, and he's not hearing from his agency. So there was some confusion right there. And whenever the dismantling of the middle class takes place, as Peep Peeping is saying right here, they're dismantling the middle class, of course. Whenever the dismantling of the middle class takes place, it's always confusion and chaos. Rules are never followed. When a contractor is working for a giant corporation and the giant corporation has decided to dissolve a big portion of their departments, and that includes workers or earners who are contractors, they never tell the contractor directly. And that's because they don't pay the contractor. They pay the agency who then pays the contractor. So if JP, if things if things had been done correctly, JP would have received a phone call from his recruiter or a phone call from the account manager who works with the big corporation. And the agency would have said, I just had a conversation with your direct manager or your direct manager's manager, and it looks like they're dissolving the apartment or the department. So it looks like you're out of a job. So that's how it should have gone, but it didn't go that way. Instead, the contractor, the company actually went directly to the contractor, not just JP, but many contractors, and said, we're dissolving the department. So JP actually had to be the one to inform his agency that the department that he was working in was dissolved, which for me as a former recruiter for Le Cordon Bleu San Francisco, this seemed really bizarre. Like there was no proper protocol that was taking place in this conversation. So that was odd. So that was a really red flag. And I even said to JP, well, are you really let go? You never heard from your contractor. As far as we're concerned, whether you're working for the company or not, the contractor should still be, or the agency should still be giving you your contract pay because they're not the ones that ever really fired you. So there was some real confusion there. But that's part of what the controlled demolition, like TM is saying, and the things that Peep Peep said before, Peep Peeping is saying, this is part of the dismantling of the middle class. This is part of the controlled demolition. There will be chaos and confusion, and proper protocol is never followed. It's always really confusing about what the truth is. So that conversation with the manager took place on January 23rd. That same day, JP sends a message over to his agency and says, I just had a conversation with my boss's boss that my department is basically being dissolved. You need to figure this out. Okay. So the agency turns around and says to JP, well, we don't know anything about this. The company, the giant multi-billion dollar, nearly, $2 trillion worth company, never told us that your department was being dissolved. They never told us that you were going to be out of a job. So JP's like, well, you better figure it out, right? So um so they decide, they finally figure it out. It took them about a week. It took them about a week to be informed about what was going on, that they lost the contract with this giant multi-billion dollar corporation who had cut off all contractors, in fact, even fired their own employees who were getting, excellent severance packages, and who did receive their bonuses, and they got pay raises, all these things that JP never got. So they not only let the contractors go, but they also let their full timers go as well. So that conversation again took place on January 23rd. Now, another weird sort of element to this conversation was the fact that there are ways that contractors are typically let go when the departments are dissolved. And it goes something like this. Your agency calls you and says, finish out the rest of your day. Don't go back to work tomorrow. The department is being dissolved. They no longer have it in the budget. And we will look for another role for you, either at another company or with the same company, but in a different department. And you don't go back to work the next day. Okay. So that's typically what happens. But in this situation, it was very strange. He got the call from the manager's manager on January 23rd, and he said to him, "We're gonna go ahead and let you stay on for 2 weeks, but then your end date will be February 7th." So immediately what this another red flag came up. It's like, okay, contractors historically throughout the history of, if you're temping, if you're a contractor, when you are let go of your position, you are not given 2 weeks to find another job or 2 weeks to continue the role and close out your relationships with your clients or with your department uh, colleagues or any of the projects you're working on. They just cut you off. Okay, so this to me was also very strange. We were thankful that he was given that extra 2 weeks because it gave him time to basically just fix up his resume, spruce up his website, uh, put more, information into his portfolio that sort of modernized his portfolio, and he started looking for work immediately on like January 24th. So even though he was still there until February 7th, collecting one or two more paychecks, he was 100% of the time looking for new work. So February 7th was his last official day. It's now February 22nd. So one of the things I want to talk to you about is sort of where we are now. And I'm just being brutally honest and just very blunt. We have not been able to pay our mortgage for the month of February because this came as a surprise. We did our taxes and we owe a little money to the IRS, but we're waiting to see what happens with this alleged tax refund for taxpayer status that Trump is sort of fielding out into the airwaves. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Um, on January 28th, I took a really bad fall. I had an autoimmune illness that has extremely flared up, and I've had to go back into allopathic care and get blood work and all this. And I have been fighting a lung issue since January 28th. The same day that I took a really bad fall is the same day that I started coughing out of nowhere. And I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. I'm doing as the best I can, trying to keep the oxygen in my lungs, drinking water, and all this. So this is sort of where we are. We are, but despite, having this lung issue for the last month that started on January 28th and has not really let up. It's a little bit better. Despite having to go back into the allopathic care, which is, finding a rheumatologist and finding a primary care doctor, which is something that I felt very uncomfortable doing. And I'll tell you about my experiences of that in one sec. So, despite all that, our attitude is pretty good. Our relationship is good. I have a lot of things I want to say about some of the things that I'm hearing out there in the universe, especially the social media universe, which I'd like to address. And I also want to talk about the things that no one else is talking about. So, but let me talk about the allopathic experience. One of the questions that the intake nurse asked me was I the gender that I was born with? And I balked and I said, "Are you serious? You really have to ask that question?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "That's awful. I can't believe you have to ask that question." And she's like, "I know, it makes me feel very uncomfortable." So, I left the response to the question and my sort of shock at it being asked. Of course I was born a female. And I answered that with no problem. But JP and I were talking about it later and I should have said I refuse to answer because I feel like it's you don't need to ask that question. Like, not that I'm anti-trans or pro-trans or whatever, it's not that. It's just the fact that these poor workers who are working in the hospital systems and in the medical industry are now forced to embarrass themselves and ask these questions. I think it's inappropriate. But so that was weird. That was the first time that I had ever been asked a question like that. And remember, my experience in the health industry and in the health system started when I was 7 years old, and it's carried me through my entire life all the way up until 2020 or 2021 when I decided to sort of exit the system because I didn't trust it anymore. So, in all of my 50 years or so of life that I had been going to Stanford and going to UCSF and going to the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center and going to all these different really high end, well known hospitals throughout the country to be treated and monitored for my autoimmune illness, not once had I ever been asked this really bizarre question, which was, "Are you the gender that you were born with?" And I just felt that it was really weird. Okay. So that part was really strange. The good thing is that I have a network of people in my life that are supportive. For instance, my mom sent me a small bottle of oregano, which is this really potent oregano oil that you like put under your tongue. And I feel that there has been some improvement in my lung situation after doing that. Another really helpful person, believe it or not, is someone I've never met. He goes by Jeremy on Twitter, and he was like, "Try cayenne pepper in everything." So what I did is I created a smoothie of a banana and organic pineapple juice, ice chips, and a bunch of cayenne pepper. And I blended it up in a blender. And I drank it and I took sips of it, and I immediately felt better as well. So, along with the oregano, it's called oregano. It's not oregano, but it's oregano oil. And it comes from I think it's the mountain herb, American mountain herb supply or something like that. You guys can look it up. But I learned that, taking knock every day will help to heal the lungs over time. So I've been taking, knock as much as I can. Of course, I ran out, so that's a little challenging. And I ran out of a bunch of stuff like vitamin C and all those things that you always want to take when you're dealing with some kind of cough or some kind of cold or some kind of long-term lung issue. So let's talk about this long-term lung issue, cough, sickness, whatever that has seemed to permeate the country. Nobody seems to be immune from it, not people who are vaccinated with either a flu shot or a COVID shot, and not people who are unvaccinated. Everybody seems to be at the mercy of this thing. So, my answer to that is that I believe it's fungal and bacterial, and that this is my opinion. I'm not, an expert. I'm not a scientist. I'm not, in the military or anything like that, but these uh, weather modification programs where you see shit being, sprayed into the sky, I truly believe that what they're laying down on the earth and what's permeating through the atmosphere are things that create more fungal issues and things that create bacterial issues. And I think it's as simple as that, because there doesn't seem to be anybody immune from it. And when it's that sort of widespread and there's really no rhyme or reason to it, it's got to be something in the atmosphere. Um, I'm I don't believe that it's bird flu. This is my opinion, of course. I think they're using that as an excuse to cull the chickens and kill all the chickens because your administration, whether they are a Democrat or a Republican, hate poor people. And one of the things that keeps protein into the bodies of poor people who are living on food stamps and, you know, people like us who can't really afford to go out and get filet mignon or anything like that, we eat a lot of eggs, and eggs are a great source of protein. I have a local friend here in the Mississippi region who keeps chickens in her backyard. She has a bunch of kids, she has a couple of jobs. Her husband has a couple of jobs. So, you know what I'm saying? So they raise their own chickens so they can have access to the eggs so they can have protein. So, your administration, your government, all of your congressional representatives, and especially those people who were not voted into office, like the Doge dudes and Elon Musk, they hate poor people. The goal is to kill off the poor people or make them very, very sick. And so they want to get rid of eggs. Eggs are an affordable source of protein. It's not bird flu. The chickens are not causing this terrible sickness that seems to have permeated the country. What's causing it, in my opinion, is the shit that's coming from the sky. Okay. It's creating a fungal kind of reaction in your lungs or a bacterial reaction in your lungs. I am in no way saying do not get allopathic treatment. I myself went into the allopathic system in order to find out if there was something that they could do. Turns out that the insurance that covers me throughout my whole life, which has been Medicare because of my autoimmune illness, turns out they no longer cover my prescriptions. So the only thing that I could really afford to buy was a cheap inhaler. I discovered, though, through this whole process that there's a nationwide shortage on inhalers. I went to a few different pharmacies and found that they had no inhalers. Fortunately, Walmart had some inhalers, so I was able to buy an inhaler for like $20 out of pocket. So I have to find out why Medicare has taken away my insurance coverage. Some of the medication that the doctor prescribed for me was really expensive, hundreds of dollars. And if my prescription insurance were still in place, like it was just a few months ago, I may be able to afford it, but I'm also open to the natural remedies, the naturopathic remedies, and also the homeopathic remedies. I'm open to that as well. Um, Pardon me. I'm going to mute for 1 second. I have to cough. Okay. Sorry about that. So, one of the things too that seems to be coming up and really trending, and there is a lot of conversation around this. And you get people saying that they're for it, and you get people saying that they're against it. And this is that $5,000 refund. So, what I want to do is break it down and explain what it really is. What it really is a tax refund. So, if you're the kind of person that never pays taxes, you never file for taxes with the IRS, then this doesn't apply to you. You will not get that refund. Just like if you are the kind of person that never filed for taxes and never filed with the IRS, you were also not qualified for the COVID bucks, what we call the COVID bucks. And even people who generally filed for taxes were, and they did, do this every year like good little American citizens or whatever. They, in some cases, they also did not qualify for the COVID bucks. The only way a person qualified for the COVID money, the extra stimulus money, they call it in the media, the COVID stimulus money, the only way that you would really qualify for it is if your company temporarily fired you, temporarily had to suspend your job because of COVID. So if you were, say, a school bus driver, like JP was at the time, and you were making minimum wage, and your school district said, we are closing down all of the schools because of this terrible virus, because of COVID, and you can apply for unemployment. And when you apply for unemployment, you will also be eligible for the stimulus because we've had to let you go, not because of your bad performance, not because of budget cuts, but because of this emergency situation, which happens to be called COVID. So that's why people were eligible for the stimulus money. Only if their companies closed down because of the COVID situation or something, that was labeled because of COVID. Okay, so I wanted to make that clear because a lot of people seem to think that there were a bunch of people just laying around who never filed their taxes and never went to work and were just getting loaded up with, thousands of dollars a month. No, very few people, not as many people as you think, qualified for that particular stimulus money. All of this criteria had to be followed. Your company had to say to you, we are letting you go either permanently or temporarily because of this virus. You can no longer do your job because of this virus that's taken over the world. It was only for those specific reasons that you would be eligible for the stimulus money. So I wanted to clear that up. All right. So regarding this Doge refund for $5,000 or whatever it is, and I mentioned this in a Substack piece, but I'll mention it again. The language around it is that Doge has rooted out so much corruption and discovered so much wasteful spending that the American population deserves to get a little bit of a kickback. Okay? That's the language around it. What the $5,000 is really about, in my opinion, is something that no one is talking about. And that is the enormous, gigantic, earth shattering, cataclysmic rise of unemployment. Not only are thousands of people being fired out of their government jobs, but hundreds of thousands of people in the corporate and private sectors are also losing their jobs. So this $5,000 is a sort of um, is a sort of weak um, to sort of ameliorate the pain of being unemployed. But they're going to market it as $5,000 to say, oh, well, you know what? All of this money that we've discovered was wasted in the government. We've saved the taxpayers a bunch of money, so we're going to give it back to them. And I actually disagree with Pete Peeping here, where she says that it's a bribe to shut everyone up. No, because they've already shut people up with or without a bribe. So I don't think that's what it is. What I think it is a way to keep the population from going absolutely shit cakes and banana cakes over the fact that there is so much unemployment that it would make your head spin. That, people who were middle class earners are no longer earning the income to keep their local communities afloat. When middle class earners, like Pete did say earlier, the middle class is being dismantled. This I absolutely agree with. When the middle class is dismantled, it affects your local economies in ways that are staggering. I'll just use me and JP for an example, okay? We're just middle class, okay? We're not rich. But because of his ability and his field, we are able to pick up a mortgage. So the local mortgage industry that decided that we were a good bet in order to give us a mortgage, they are then kept going. So those people that work in this industry still have jobs because of us. The local grocery stores are still kept afloat because we go into the grocery stores and spend hundreds of dollars a month to feed ourselves. The local restaurants that are run by, just a few people that got together and decided they wanted to open up a nice restaurant or a cafe, they are still kept afloat because of, the fact that maybe once or twice a month we would go in and drop a decent amount of cash in at their business. The local hardware store where we go and pick up, some nails for any projects we have around the house. Oh, the local handymen that depend on us. Hey, can you come over and fix our, broken this, or, maybe paint this wall. We've got some issues here and there that need to be fixed up. So we're giving them money. So when the middle class earners are dismantled, it is like a domino effect, and it absolutely destroys local economies in ways that you may not be aware of. You're keeping, by having the money coming in, you're keeping everything afloat. You're keeping everybody else buoyed and up and able to pay their rent or pay their mortgage. And when the middle class is is dismantled, like Peep said earlier, is it goes away. All of it goes away. Now, I don't want to get too nuanced about this, but TM over here is saying that the conversation is somewhat distorted because what is described as middle class in the USA over the last 5 or 7 decades or so are actually working class in most other domains. And I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I mean, if you look at JP's situation, where he wasn't earning any pay raises because he was stuck into a quote gig economy, where he never got a bonus, while all of his full-time colleagues got bonuses and pay raises. He never did, and he was doing the same work. It's simply because he was labeled as a contractor, or he was stuck in a middle class, or he was stuck in a gig economy. So yeah, so once upon a time middle class did mean people could, own a home and have live-in servants. That's not the case anymore, right? Absolutely not the case anymore. No, middle class is basically just, you're right, the modern day version of middle class is the way that we live. We've lived this way since for the entirety of our marriage, paycheck to paycheck, you know, working, sort of dancing on a pin, making sure that we can pay the mortgage and pay the utilities and pay for food and pay for our repairs around the house and pay for our friends in need and all this stuff. Well, so this is what's happening when 10 to 20% of the population loses that, then you have a devastating economic crash that no one is talking about. The crash that took place in the 20s was covered by the media. There were big giant headlines that said, crash, the stock exchanges crashed and everybody was aware of it. But here, the media is not doing their job. They're not talking about it. It's just happening. And so this $5,000 is to ameliorate or somewhat, you know, cynically help those people that have found themselves without employment. And it only applies to people who were working in a W-2 scenario. Okay. So if you're getting paid under the table, it doesn't apply to you. If you are employed, it may not apply to you. It may, but it may not apply to you. So what happens is, and the fact is that the Trump administration hasn't even approved that this thing is going to go through. It's simply being fielded out there, and I think what they're doing is they're parsing through the algorithms. Those people that are for it and those people that are against it, and then there's a bunch of people that are asking questions about what does it mean. Um, First of all, I think it's simply a way to keep the unemployed from rising up and describing their situation the way that I have very uh, carefully described our situation. I've been incredibly transparent about what it means to live without that middle class income. We can't pay our mortgage. We're getting overdue notices right and left. We can't pay our $237 uh, utility bill. We can barely afford to buy groceries. And not only that, to me, not that this is a problem, we are super excited that our friend who's been planning to come out here um, since the fall, um, she's been planning this since last, like, October or November or December. She's coming out in a couple days, and JP and I are sitting here trying to get really creative about things that we can do with her when she's out here on vacation that won't cost us any money. It's very challenging to do because here on the Gulf Coast, it is one of the most expensive places to, like, if you go out to eat or if you buy groceries. 4 bags of groceries cost us $400. 2 plates and 2 glasses of wine at a restaurant cost us 150. So it is very expensive to live here. So we make a lot of food at home and we get really creative. So there will be lots of bike rides because bike rides don't cost anything and she loves to ride a bike. So there will be lots of bike rides showing her the area. Um, there will be a couple of free parades that we can attend because it is Mardi Gras season. So this we're thankful that, and we're also thankful that she's an incredibly humble person and doesn't expect us to go out and spend thousands of dollars to bankroll her vacation. So we really appreciate that. And I think that's probably because she's from Pennsylvania. And, they're very humble people. And we did meet some amazing people when we lived there. And we're so grateful for that time that we had in Pennsylvania. I actually really enjoyed it. I had to travel back to Pennsylvania the entirety of 2024 to fix a bone issue that had taken place in my mouth where I was told by a periodontist that if I don't get specialized treatment and take care of this right away, that I would lose my entire bottom teeth. I woke up one morning and all my teeth had splayed apart, and that meant that the bone had suddenly become extremely brittle out of nowhere. I think it was a toxin. So and this happened in late 2022. in 2023 while we were still living in Pennsylvania. So I developed a relationship with a team of doctors that worked really diligently to make sure that I could not lose my teeth, and I didn't, and everything's great. And if I was on camera, I would be smiling really big so that you could see how perfect my teeth look. But it cost a lot of money. I had to travel back to Pennsylvania every 6 weeks, spend money that we didn't have in order to continue this process. Insurance covered none of it. It cost about $20,000 total to take care of it. And that we could really use that money right now, to be honest. But I had to do it to make sure that I didn't lose my teeth. So it makes me realize why I see so many people walking around in communities of poverty that don't have teeth because they say, well, if I fix my teeth, I won't be able to put my kids through school, or I won't be able to pay my rent, or I won't be able to, um, you know, buy groceries, or I won't be able to pay my utilities. So I guess my teeth are just going to have to be the thing that I give up. And what kind of a country is that where those are your options? You have to ask yourself: is that does that represent American values that Trump is always talking about? Does that represent making America great again? I don't think so. So we have some really like systemic problems that need to be addressed that no one's really talking about. They're not talking about poverty. They're not talking about how poverty is like a cancer that is just taking over the middle class. Um, But I wanted to address that $5,000 that keeps getting, sort of it keeps getting fielded out to the um it keeps getting fielded out to social media. Let me show this message on stream from TM. This is regarding teeth. You always hear stories about how in the UK everyone's teeth are really bad, and it's sort of a cliche, right? Like it's just kind of a running joke. But this actually gives it some context. So there was a story in the Guardian the other day about a woman who pulled out several of her teeth by herself. The teeth were actually okay. It was gum disease, and it was a 7-year wait for NHS treatment. Wow, that's horrible. So there's something about where this entire process of destroying the middle class, again, like Peep said, all the way back up here, um, is about humiliating the population, making sure that the population is constantly humiliated. This dismantling of the middle class is a tactic for humiliation. There's nothing more humiliating than being toothless, in my opinion. Um, to be able to have strong, healthy teeth is a sign, or to at least have teeth that look strong and healthy, is a sign that you yourself take care of yourself, that you do all the right things to take care of your body and your life. It kind of starts with your teeth. So there's something about the teeth that I find there is. Um, what is this? A tooth in your mouth is worth a diamond in your hand. Only from Pennsylvania, right? I don't know what that means. But thank you for that. So, yeah, exactly. Humiliation ritual is the technical term. Exactly. So, I appreciate that. So um so there's something about that. Like what kind of an administration, whether you're in the UK or the United States or, you know, wherever you are, what kind of a government or an administration or even a capitalist uh, situation wants to humiliate people? Like they find joy in the humiliation. I find that that's a sign of a very sick society. So the $5,000 is only for people who were on W-2s, okay? If it goes through. Again, I wanna stress that none of this is really, none of this has been put before Congress to pass. There's been no executive order. There's just this they're just feeling the idea out to the population. So you have to be on a W-2. So if you get paid under the table, it won't apply to you. And you also have to um, file your taxes. So even if you do get your W-2s, but you never file taxes, um, like you've just decided never to file taxes, even though you do get your W-2s at the end of every year from your company, it will also not apply to you. You have to be a taxpayer. So those people who do file their taxes every year would qualify for this, and as long as they're on a W-2. I don't know if 1099s, these are people who file their taxes, but they have, like, their own businesses, and they don't actually get W-2s. They do something called 1099. So I don't know if it would even apply to them, to those people. So again, it will not be this widespread, you know, population, a gift to the population. It will only be a certain amount of people in the population that qualify for it. I don't think it's a bribe for to keep people quiet. I think that people have been destroyed. Look, Rockfin just took us down. Like, I have no way to stream to Rockfin anymore. When Facebook sent all of their users the email back in November of 2024 that said, as a user on Facebook, you are now automatically agreeing to be paid or to be fed into and scraped into AI models. That was essentially forcing people to get off the platform, which is what we did. Um, so you know, you don't need to give someone $5,000 to say that they're going to destroy your freedom of speech, because our freedom of speech is already being squelched and destroyed without it. So there is that. I think what it's hush money. Basically, so that the unemployed, and it's hush money to a specific demographic. It's hush money to middle class W-2 earners who file their taxes religiously every year who are now unemployed. It's hush money to them to ameliorate the financial struggles that they're in right now. I just wanted to, give that some context, because not everybody will qualify for that particular stimulus, just like not everybody qualified for the COVID stimulus. There were very specific criteria that you as an earner had to fall under in order to qualify for it. In the COVID situation, you had to be a W-2 earner, file your taxes, and your company had to specifically let you go because of COVID. So, um, not everybody qualified for that. So, um, what else is going on? There's a lot of distraction. There's a lot of stuff going on. Again, we talked about how there's this idea that there's a bird flu going around. There is not, in my opinion, which could be wrong, there is not a bird flu, but there is a toxic event taking place, which is making everybody really sick for a long time. A giant percentage of my life so far has been dedicated to resting, trying to get better. Again, I've been dealing with this lung issue since January 28th, which is why we haven't been able to go live as often as we want. So, that explains it. A couple of people have helped. My mom has helped. There's somebody that is a supporter who we've been in communication with, and she's offered really good advice. Said, that she's hopefully going to help. I mean, in some way, even if it's just sending over information. You know what I'm saying? Um, we, but I want to close out this hour-long broadcast with a couple of interesting things because JP and I live in a space of sort of we're settled into this situation that we're in. We try not to act in panic or fear mode. It does creep in once in a while, especially when you get those notices from the utility company that says you're late, you're past due, and I don't have the money to pay that. So, this is very scary because I don't want our heat to get turned off. But we try not to panic. Now, before he um, was told that he was going to be let go and that February 7th would be his last day of work, we had been frustrated because we don't have a working oven. And we live in a house that was built originally in 1948, and then there was a slight upgrade in 1953. So this is at least a 50, almost 60-year-old house, mid-century, right? So there are some old um, systems in this house, and one of them is the oven. It's that old-fashioned oven. We love it. We love the way it looks, but it wasn't working, and we were getting more and more nervous about the fact, that we didn't have a working oven. So this was before he was let go. So we found the most affordable oven that we could on Lowe's, and it was like $300 off the original price, and then we got another percentage off because we used our Lowe's card. So we were like, "Okay, let's do this." So we bought this oven, and over time we paid it off. And so we've had this oven sitting in our garage for 6 months. And we have local handymen who are really good. It's an electric oven, and they're really these local handymen that we use. They're really good with they're electricians. They used to work like in the film and music industry, I think, where they would set up all of the electronics and the lightings and all the things that you need to make a production go. And then they went into business for themselves to work on homes and projects and companies, and they do work with churches and all this stuff. So we haven't had an oven working for many, many, many months. And those electricians, but came out right before JP was told that he was going to be fired. Those electricians came out to do some smaller electrical work around the house. We wanted a fan changed out. We wanted them to look at some electrical wiring. We wanted to make sure that it was still live, and that, living in a 60-year-old house, you have to think about these things. And we said, by the way, we have a bigger project coming up down the pike where we want to install this brand new electric oven because our current oven that we've had that's been in here since, the 50s is not working, and we don't really have like a functioning oven. So the electrician walks over to the oven. I kid you not. And he goes, "Well, what's wrong with it? This is our 50-year-old oven that has not been working." And I said, "Well, I can't turn the knob. It doesn't turn on. The heating coils don't work." And he's like, "Really?" And he turned the knob, and the oven turned on. I kid you not. I almost fell over. I almost passed out. It was like watching a miracle right in front of me. In retrospect, I have to say that in some ways, I believe in miracles because right after they left is when JP lost his job. And so we could not move forward. We could not afford to move forward with this really expensive project, taking out a 50-year-old oven out of the kitchen, installing a brand new oven in its place. We would have to do all sorts of reconfigurations around it in the kitchen, build out shelves. It would be a very expensive project for these electricians. And we simply did not have we don't have the funds to do it now that there's unemployment. that he's not employed since February 7th. But that electrician made our current oven somehow, he made it turn on. It was a freaking miracle. Now we have a working oven. I can roast potatoes and roast carrots now. I can eat like a normal person in a working oven. That is a miracle because we couldn't before that. In fact, that was the whole reason we bought the new oven to begin with all those months ago, was because we did not have a working oven. So I do believe in miracles. And there's a couple of other things too that have taken place, which, I can talk about later. I've hit the 1 hour mark. My chest and my throat and my lungs have really gotten a workout with this conversation. So I think I need to close it out. But I wanted to close out this broadcast on a positive note, despite the terrifying position that we're in right now with no income, despite the the everything. We have Our relationship is wonderful. It's been really a really extraordinary situation going back into allopathic medicine, where they're trying to support me so that maybe I can get some kind of benefit support from outside sources so that we're not at least starving to death. I mean, I feel that there are certain systems in place that will help people like us, or people others out there who are really struggling. Um, so I just wanted to leave it on a positive note. There have been some other things that have taken place too that have really shown us that, miracles are actually really real if you just keep the faith and keep yourself from falling into fear and panic mode. But also keep your eyes open to the reality. You notice that not one news outlet and not one social media influencer is talking about the destruction of the middle class, the massive amount of jobs that have been removed from our economy, those middle class earners who are contributing back into their local economies in order to keep the grocery stores going and the gas stations going and the restaurants going and the local boutique shops going and even the local Target going. Those middle class earners are gone now. They're not there to put their hard earned income back into their local economy. And that has the devastating effects. So people are getting really creative about how they can keep their economies going. I know we're trying to get creative over here. So I wanted to end this on a positive note, and also a reminder that there's a reality that no one's talking about. And so if I were you, I would be researching it and check in with your neighbors and say, are you guys doing okay? Do you need a casserole or something like that? Because our neighbors have done that for us, and it's been enormously helpful. So that's where we are. I love the fact that you all jumped onto this broadcast and this live stream to listen. Next time, maybe we will actually be on camera. There's no way I could have done it today. But I wanted to, it's been 2 weeks since we've said anything or done anything, and I've written a couple of Substack pieces, but I wanted to do more, and just kind of let you know where we are. And if you feel you got something out of this, and you feel that it's something that your followers or anybody that you're, in touch with on social media would benefit from this, please share it. You never know what someone might get out of this. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. Love you guys. You're the best. I really appreciate all the comments. A lot of comments coming in. I couldn't show them all, but a lot of good feedback today. I learned some things. Hopefully, you did as well. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye.